All right, welcome back to another installment of the Wide Right Podcast. I'm Manny Navarro, Miami Hurricanes beat writer for The Athletic, joined today by one of my brothers at the company. That would be Sam Khan, our resident Texpert, who covers the entire state of Texas for The Athletic. Really does a phenomenal job. Sam, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you doing this morning?
Doing great. I know you're a busy guy. You got so many different teams to cover out there, and two teams that I would say are on the rise. Texas and Texas A&M, what they've done on the recruiting trail has just been amazing. Miami's trying to get into the party too in that great comeback story with Texas and USC and all these other schools that are investing big NIL dollars to upgrade these rosters. But the Canes and A&M will face each other week 3, September 17. And I wanted to bring you on early. I know it's still technically week 1, and this game isn't until September 17th, but it's a big one. ESPN had their crew down here hanging out with Mario Cristobal all week. George Sedano, who's one of their NBA guys, he was with Mario. I saw him having coffee with him. So this is gonna be a big deal. Week 3, I'm sure you'll probably be there. I'll be there. Just tell us a little bit about A&M and what your early read has been in coming out of camp.
Yeah, overall, this is a really good team that has a lot of talent. The one thing that Jimbo Fisher has done, and you referenced the recruiting, he's done a really good job, not just of this last class, which of course got a lot of attention for being the number one class in the country and number one class in the modern era in terms of 247's ratings, but he's done a good job of stacking talent over the last 3-4 years. They've got 4 straight top 10 classes. I think actually all 4 of them, I think, rank in the top 8 nationally. And so, given that, when you lose some of the guys they lost last year, like they lost the entire starting defensive line, well, you just recruited 8 or 7 high level top 100 defensive linemen. Plus, you've got a lot of guys that are second and third year guys who have already been in the program who are ready to step in. So, you got a lot of talent overall, top to bottom in the roster. I think this is a team that, if the schedule was a little bit more friendly, that this would be a team that might be able to get in the playoff conversation this year. But I look at them as probably a double digit win team this year, a 10-2 type team, setting up for a really, really big 2023. But overall, I think this is a good team. It's a confident team. And I think it's going to be really a fascinating year after what was a disappointing one in 2021 for Jimbo Fisher and company.
Yeah, I mean, they were preseason top 10 last year too, right? I mean, they had all the hype, all the expectations. It was year 3 of the Fisher era, and they go out and go 8-4, but they beat Alabama in the process. So they showed you what they could be when they kind of were at their best. Now they were playing the whole season with essentially a backup quarterback after an injury there to King, and so that obviously put them back a little bit. But let's break the team down position by position. King, obviously, that was the news this week. He won the starting job coming out of camp. Let's start with quarterback and kind of where they're at and how good you think they can be at that position.
Yeah, I think King's got a lot of potential. I'm excited to see him get unleashed and hopefully play a full season here. That was the thing, is I think a lot of the struggles last year were born out of 2 things: inexperienced quarterback play. Obviously, you ended up with Zach Calzada starting 10 of the 12 games after King went down, and inconsistent offensive line play. They were really young up front last year. They started 2 freshmen on the offensive line: Bryce Foster at center, Ruben Fathery at right tackle. Both of those guys, by time you got to the end of the season, were really good, and you could see these guys are really potential stars. And so that now up front, I think, has become a strength. And at quarterback, you've upgraded the floor of the room, because you have King back, who's now in his 3rd year in the offense, but you brought in a transfer in Max Johnson. So if anything happens to Haynes King, you got a guy who started 14 games at LSU, started all last season, is a bona fide experienced SEC starter. So you're not in the position you were last year where King goes down, who already was inexperienced, and then now you're turning to another inexperienced guy, and you don't have any other scholarship guys beyond him. Now you've got Max Johnson in there, and you've got Connor Wegman, a 5-star recruit. But King, I think, could really help this offense take off, because he's not only a great passer, but he is a tremendous runner. He's a sub 4.5 40 guy. He hit I think Jimbo Fisher told me in July that he hit 22 miles once on the GPS this offseason,
Wow.
which for a quarterback is pretty impressive,
Yeah.
even if it's without pads, which I assume it would have been. But that kind of speed for a quarterback, I think you can really open things up offensively. And then the other big thing for A&M is going to be expanding the downfield passing game. They struggled throwing the ball downfield. They were in the bottom 35 nationally in a bunch of major categories and throwing balls 10 or more yards in the air. They got to get better in there. They definitely emphasize receiver and high level receivers in his recruiting class. One of them that you'll probably see on September 17th is Evan Stewart, 5-star freshman out of the Dallas area. He's a big time recruit, and getting a look at him in camp, whew, he looks like a guy who
Yeah.
could play right away and contribute.
Yeah, and so ultimately, King, I would say, being a dual threat, right? I mean, that's kind of what separates him maybe from the other two guys. The fact that he's got that other gear and can keep defenses honest with just taking off and running and making big plays.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think you saw some elements of it when Kellen Mond was there
Mm-hmm.
in his senior year. And Jimbo Fisher, Kellen was a great dual threat. He was also a very, very fast guy, was a track star in high school and things like that. Jimbo very much tried to make him into more of a pro style quarterback and did a good job of it. But Kellen gave you an element of when I get out on the edge and the play breaks down, I can do something different and I can extend plays or I can run. King's got that ability as well. And I think it's going to be the same thing. You're gonna find some growing pains. Again, he's only started 2 games and really only played 5 quarters as a starter. The rest of his time in an AM uniform has been as backup and mop up duty. So this is going to be a learning experience for him. Jimbo Fisher is, known for having a very complex pro style offense. So he asks a lot. He demands a lot of his guys. But having been in this thing for 3 years now, he's gotten some experience. He's gotten a chance to start. I think that the opportunity is we're going to see how it turns out, obviously. And this non-conference schedule will be a great time to see how Haynes King grows. But I do think his pure talent is good enough to help, like I say, take this offense to the next level, in my opinion.
Running game, Isaiah Spiller's gone. He's on the Chargers. He's my handcuff to Austin Eckler in my fantasy team. So I have to
I
make sure
drafted him too.
I got to make sure I get him, add him to the roster here at some point. But they still got one of the fastest, most talented backs back there, I guess, and Devon Chain, a kid who I think didn't he make the freaks list?
Yeah, he did. He is a physical freak because he is. First of all, everybody talks about his speed, which is, I mean, he runs a 10-1 100 meters.
Wow.
He made the NCAA championships last year in track. He's a legitimate track star, but he also is a lot more durable and stronger than you would think. You think of speed guys and you think, oh, that's a guy, who is just only going to be on the perimeter. No, Devon Achane will put his nose in between the tackles and he'll get after it. And if anybody watched that Orange Bowl that they won, that Texas A&M beat North Carolina a couple years ago,
yeah,
he ran, I think, for a 70-yard touchdown, and you see him break about 3 tackles on the way to that score. So he's got that kind of physical ability. The interesting thing will be now he's going to be the lead guy. He's going to get the bulk of the carries. He got over 100 carries last year, finished with, I think, 900-ish yards. So he's gotten a lot of work, but now he is going to be the bell cow as opposed to Isaiah Spiller. So it's going to be interesting to see how he responds to that. And they've got some guys they like beyond him, but he is going to be the star. And I think if things go like you think they can go for A&M this year, I wouldn't rule him out as a dark horse Heisman guy down the road. I think he's got that kind of talent.
Yeah, Amari Daniels is a Miami area guy. Played at Central, and I guess he's one of the backups there. Ernest Crownover, I guess, is another one. Just do they feel confident if something were to happen to H.A.N. that they'd be okay?
Yeah, they do. I think so. L.J. Johnson is one of them. Amari Daniels. I think those are the 2 next guys that you're looking at. Is Daniels and L.J. Johnson, and then they brought in a top 100 freshman out of Louisiana in Le'Veon Moss. So between those 3, yeah, I think they feel good about what they have. LJ's been in the program a little bit. Amari's been in the program a little bit. So I don't think it's going to be the 1-2 punch that they had with Spiller and A-Chain. Those are 2 really, really high level guys, and we'll have to see. I mean, LJ was a blue chip recruit, top recruit. Amari was a good recruit, so who knows? But that's going to be another one of the interesting learning experiences in these first few games in non-conferences. Who among those guys develops into the number 2 guy?
You mentioned Evan Stewart. How deep is that receiver room, and do they have a tight end that Miami should be concerned about?
So the tight end is going to be a rebuilding area for them. They had Jalen Weidemeyer for the last 3 years. He was a Mackey Award finalist twice. They've got now 3 freshmen. They've got some veteran guys who've been in the program like Max Wright and Blake Smith, who are more blocking types, but they
Yeah.
brought in 3 true freshmen. Jake Johnson, who's the brother of the LSU transfer, Max Johnson. They brought in Donovan Green, who's a local guy from the Houston area, and they brought in a Swedish tight end from the PPI program that travels around the country, Theodore Omstrom.
Hmm.
Those are the 3 guys that are going to be in the mix. I would anticipate Jake Johnson and Donovan Green being the guys who get a lot of the action early. Theodore's, Swedish. I think he's probably still going to take some time to acclimate a little bit as he gets adjusted to football on this side of the pond. But Donovan and Jake, I feel like, are really, really highly talented. It's just going to be an issue of seeing him getting live reps. When I saw him in practice, really impressive. I'm really impressed by Donovan Green. I think he's a good one. As far as receiver, yeah, Evan Stewart, obviously, you're going to hope that he stretches the field. But their best receiver, pound for pound, is Anaya Smith, and he does everything. He's a receiver. He'll line up in the slot. He can go out wide. He can go in the backfield and take a handoff. He's kind of their Debo Samuel in a way, and has been that for the last couple of years. And he'll also be a return specialist. But Anias is their go-to guy. And then the other guy I would put on the radar here, and is not somebody that people talk about a lot, but I think he's going to be a really key cog to them, is Chase Lane. Veteran receiver. He's going into his senior year. He's battled some injuries here and there, but really, really reliable. Good hands. Overall, really talented guy. Not going to blow you away. He's not going to blow you away with his speed, or I don't think he's going to make a million highlight reels, but he's a reliable guy who I think can be a real safety valve for Haynes King this season. And I think he's going to be invaluable to this receiving core this year if he can stay healthy.
I'm sitting here cheating, reading your state of the program just so I can review all these names. I've got so many names in my head, so I need to use this as my cheat sheet. But this is where I remind our listeners and people tuning into us here on YouTube that, the Athletic, we had a state of the program for every Power 5 team, I think, except for Syracuse, who didn't want to help us out too much with that endeavor. But you did an excellent job with all, breaking this down. So if they want to read this for themselves, you can sign up for the Athletic. Just click on do a search on Google for Sam Khan, state of the program at Texas A&M, and it'll come up right away. And you think it's $1 to sign up. Make sure you subscribe and read this stuff. It's good information as you scout all the opponents on Miami's schedule. The offensive line, as you wrote here, 3 out of the 5 starters are back, basically the center and the right side. How's the confidence level in that group coming out of camp? Miami's feeling really confident about what they did in the transfer portal on the defensive line, and they really think that's going to be their team strength this year. They've got 6 or 7 guys they think they can roll at edge and at the tackle position, which is going to be pivotal in today's game to have that kind of depth.
No doubt, no doubt. Like I said earlier, I think that's one thing that was a little bit of weakness early on last season, and they think they feel like the offensive line is becoming a strength for them at A&M. That right, having that right side back is going to be huge. Having Foster back is going to be huge, and they've got depth. Daryl Dickey, their offensive coordinator, said that he feels like they've got more guys up front that they can put into a game and trust in a game than they've had since the staff has been here. So that's a positive. Trey Zune's probably going to be in your left tackle. He's a guy who's been around a little bit, so they feel overall pretty good about that group. And you saw it against Alabama. They really did a pretty decent job of protecting Calzada, of opening some holes in the run game. So if they can play to that level and play to it consistently, then you really have unlocked something. I don't know if this line's going to reach the level of the 2020 line when A&M went 9-1. That group was one of the best in the country, but they definitely feel a lot better about where they sit up front than they did a year ago when they had to break in those 2 freshmen and when they had to mix and match and move guys. They had so many different combinations up front. And they did lose a first-round pick in Kenyon Green, who played 4 of those positions last year. But overall, they still feel pretty good about the talent they have because of the level they've recruited the last few years.
Obviously, big change on defense. Mike Elko goes to be the head coach at Duke. But how's the system in place? Is it just picking up and running the same scheme pretty much?
Yeah, the base 4 down is still going to be pretty similar. They're still going to have running out 5 defensive backs quite a bit. Obviously DJ Durkin's putting a little bit of tweaks here and there, and there's going to be some differences for sure. And that's another thing is over these next few weeks, we'll see how does he call a game. Is he aggressive as Elko is when it comes to blitzing and things like that? But the talent is there. And overall, like I said, you saw what Durkin did at Ole Miss, turning around from 2020 to 2021. That defense made a lot of big steps. So I'm curious to see what kind of difference you see here, because you do have a lot of young faces. That defensive line is going to be a lot of new guys, a lot of fresh faces, even the ones who have been in the program. Most of them haven't started full time. They've been maybe spot starters, guys that have been rotational guys. So they got a lot of experience on the back end, some pretty good experience at linebacker, and a lot of new faces up front. So I'm curious to see how it plays out. But overall, the returns on Durkin have been pretty good.
Who stood out in camp? I mean, I mean, we know. I mean, seven. You mentioned seven defensive linemen in his last recruiting class. Shamar Stewart is a guy locally here out of South Florida that Miami badly wanted. Mario wasn't able to keep him here. I think maybe if he had a little bit more time to recruit him, maybe he would have been able to convince Shamar. Where's Shamar in that pecking order as far as what you're hearing and seeing? Is he going to play this year? Or there's just too many better guys in front of him, and kind of who's kind of standing out?
No, I think Shamar is a guy that'll get on the field, and I tell you, he's one. When you look at him, when you go out there and watch him, he
Yeah.
looks like I was saying earlier with some of the guys. He looks like a Division I major college football defensive lineman. So I think you'll see him get in the rotation for sure. Some of the other guys, Anthony Lucas, who is a
Yeah.
freshman top 50 guy from the state of Arizona, he was an early enrollee, and I would be stunned if that guy didn't make a big impact for them this year. That I think you'll see Walter Nolan in the mix, who was the number 2 overall recruit in the country, number 1 defensive lineman. I think you'll see him in the mix as well. I think so. A lot of these young guys will get in the mix, but the names that you'll probably see more of are going to be McKinley Jackson, Fadil Diggs, Shamar Turner. These are all guys that were in the previous classes before. Isaiah Rakes. Isaiah Rakes has been a rotational defensive lineman for them in previous years. Those are some of the guys I think you'll see a lot of, and I think you're going to see A&M, kind of like you said with Miami. They're going to try to roll 8, maybe even 10 guys up front, because they can afford you, because they got this much talent up front, and it'll get a chance to get some of those young guys some experience, but it'll also help develop those guys who have been in the program who are now moving into those starting roles.
Linebacker is the one area on defense for Miami that, people look at the roster and they say, okay, they need somebody to step up there. They're one of the worst tackling teams in the country. They went out and they got Caleb Johnson through the transfer portal, a guy that was at Texas, I guess, at one point. And they're excited about him. They're excited about some of the growth these guys have been having under Charlie Strong. Where's the linebacker position at A&M, and who are kind of the guys there?
I think they feel good about their starting guys. Edgerrin Cooper is probably the guy that'll flash the most. Really, really fast, can run and hit. Has been in the program for a little bit. Andre White, pretty experienced guy. I think those two guys you're going to see quite a bit of, and then you'll see them rotate, a Terrion Lee Jr. or so even some of their freshmen potentially. But that's the area where I think if Jimbo Fisher could have added somebody from the portal this summer to restore some depth a little bit, I think he would have loved to have done that. That was the one thing when I talked to him in the spring. He thought, hey, if there's one spot I'd like to shore up depth wise, it's linebacker. And they explored it a little bit. Didn't end up getting anybody, but they had kicked the tires on Katie Davis, who's at North Texas, who ended up staying in North Texas. And certainly they mined the portal a little bit for it, but they haven't really found a guy. But Chris Russell's a guy you may see a little bit, but Edge Cooper and Andre White are going to be the two guys you see the most of. And then from there on, it's just kind of a rotational deal to see who can step up.
Yeah, 4 out of the 5 in the secondary, as you wrote here in your state of the program, are back in terms of starters. Cornerbacks, Jaden Jones, Tyreek Chappelle, and you got some guys at safety, obviously. Tell us about that group and I mean, obviously the defense was pretty good last year, but how would you rate them coming out of camp here?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good group, and that is probably the group on defense that you're going to feel best about is in the secondary. Like you said, you got Jones and Chappelle back, and they're pretty deep at corner. They can rotate a lot of guys. Brian George, who's played a lot in his time, is the back. Miles Jones, a 6th-year guy who's been in this program since I think 2017. I think he signed with Kevin Sumlin.
Wow.
He's been around long time. Yeah. So, and Miles is a guy. He's battled some injuries, but super experienced, long. Really, really talented guy. So they're really deep at corner. And then they brought in some really talented guys. Denver Harris is a guy who, one of the top 100 guys, to 5-star prospect. I think he's a guy you could see contribute fairly soon. And then in the back end, the fascinating part will be, how do they use Antonio Johnson? That is their best defensive back, in my opinion, by far. Super talented guy, mostly played that nickel role, that hybrid safety
Yeah.
corner role, closer to the box because he can get in the mix and he's around the ball a lot. Can be a real problem, but he's got the ability to be on the back end if they need him. If they need him on the roof, he can do that. And so it'll be fascinating to see, does he stay in that role that he was in last year, or they move him around as they work in some of these other guys into some of these other positions. And then Damani Richardson, who is a veteran guy, bypassed chance to go to the draft, coming back for a senior season. Damani's a true leader, one of the true leaders of this team. As reliable as they come, he's going to be a big time guy. And they've got to fill a spot there. You know, they've got Damani, Leon O'Neal, who's been the veteran safety for them, went on to the pro leagues. He's the guy they're going to have to replace. So it'll be interesting. Is that Antonio Johnson? Is that somebody else? Is that one of these younger guys? Bryce Anderson, a true freshman who they brought in, who enrolled in the spring. Really, really impressive guy. Thought he was really talented, and saw him do some things in the spring. Saw him do some things in spring ball. I mean, fall camp when I went over to see him a couple weeks ago. So they've got a lot of talent back there. They've got a lot of depth. They've got a lot of experience, and they've got some really, really highly talented new faces as well. So that's an area where if I'm looking at a strength on this defense, it's definitely the secondary for Texas A&M.
And special teams, they got to replace their kicker, right? Outside of that, though, everybody else is back, and I know they've got a pretty good punter.
Yeah. Caden Davis is probably going to end up being your kicker. And then Nick Constantino, your punter, who's one of the best out there. He had led the conference last year. I think he averaged about 46 yards a punt. So they feel good there. And then the return game is really, really good. You guys, everybody saw Devon Achane return that kick against Alabama. Now that he's the lead back, I'll be interested to see, is he still the primary kickoff returner? I would assume so, but that'll be interesting to see, does Evan Stewart figure in there? Does somebody else in the receiver game, or maybe even somebody in the secondary figure in that? Does Bryce Anderson, who was a high school quarterback and who's handled the ball a lot, could he be a factor there? Be interesting to see. And then Anaya Smith, who's been their primary punt returner, will remain that role. He's dynamic. Like I said, he's kind of the jack of all trades for them, and honestly, one of the best all around players in the country, one of the more versatile players in the country. So I think that you feel really good about where you are from a return game standpoint. You feel pretty good at punter. Be interested to see how Caden Davis emerges, because Seth Small was so reliable in his time as kicker for them, but they feel pretty confident in him overall.
When you play in the SEC West and you've got Alabama and LSU and so many great opponents on the schedule every year, I wonder where the excitement level is for Miami, that's coming off a 7-5 with Mario Cristobal coming into town, is for the fan base there. I mean, obviously it's a step up from Sam Houston and Appalachian State, the first two opponents, but it's different in the SEC. I think they kind of probably look down their nose at other programs coming from like the ACC. What's the excitement level like for the Hurricanes?
Oh no, I think everybody's kind of circling that game because it's a night kick, and night kicks at Kyle Field are always boisterous and intense. So I think it's like an 8 p.m. Central Time kick. So there's a lot of anticipation for the game, because I think a lot of A&M fans feel like that's going to be the first test for this team. They got Sam Houston, who's an FCS team, by the way, a very, very good FCS team to open it up when week one. And they've got App State, who, as you know, App State can be a little sticky. They're definitely one of the better group of 5 programs. They're one of the better group of 5 programs out there. So
yeah.
But all things being equal, A&M's way more talented these teams, so they should win those games going away. This Miami team, obviously, with the preseason top 25 ranking coming in, and a new regime and a lot of energy, obviously a lot of excitement around that program after Mario Cristobal took over. I think A&M fans look at this is a first test to really learn, hey, what's this team going to look like? And if you are going to be an SEC title contender or a playoff contender this year, this is the game you need to go win, and you need to go win. I don't want to say convincingly, but you got to win and make it look good. You've got you've got to leave a really good impression if you're going to show yourself that to be that kind of team. But it's definitely, I think there'll be some excitement because, hey, it's a Power 5 team. It's a program with a national following that people know about, that has a strong history and reputation. And it's a night game with a top 25 team in town. I mean, I think you can't get much more excited than for things like that. And they're not getting Alabama to come to this year. Then Auburn's not coming to Kyle Field this year. Those are both road games. I think the other home games that are going to be of note for A&M this year are Ole Miss and LSU, and those are in the back end of the season. So this is the first real big home game for them in the first half of the year. And then after this Miami game, they're away from Kyle Field for 6 weeks. They have
Wow.
a neutral site game against
Hmm.
Arkansas. They have an open date in between, and then they have a bunch of road games. So they don't, after this Miami game, they do not come back and play a home game at Kyle Field, I believe, till the last week of October.
Wow.
So this is going to be like a little sampling for them, and then you're not going to see them back at Kyle Field for a while. So I think there's plenty of anticipation for this one from an A&M standpoint.
How much pressure is there on Jimbo Fisher to deliver this year?
I don't think it's so much this year. I think, like I said, I said at the top, I think next year is the year to me. It's not to say that they can't. They're a preseason top 10 team, and they should be better. I think you should see some improvement this year. 8-4 is not good this year. If you do that, you should be in my opinion, a 10-win team. If things break tough with the schedule, if you're 9-3, I can kind of see that. But to me, when you bring in this type of class, you've brought in 4 straight top 10 classes. You've shored up depth at quarterback. The offensive line is getting better. You've gone through a lot of those growing pains, and everything that he's asked for in his program, he's gotten. So we are coming to that point where, hey, it is time to deliver. I don't think it's championship or bust expectations this year. I think it's, hey, would we like to? Yes. Is that our hope? Absolutely. But is the world going to end if we don't get to the playoff this year? No. I think next year is more of the year that you do that, because you get this freshman class in for a full year. You've got whoever your starting quarterback is, which this year it's Haynes King. He's got a year under his belt now. That offensive line has grown a little bit more. So, and you're in your second year of your defense coordinator, ostensibly, if DJ Durkin's still around in a year, which I would assume he would be. All those things are in place. So, not to say that that's not in place now to make a run, but I think when you go to Alabama for a road game, which, by the way, is going to be very, very intense and highly anticipated after that verbal spat that Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban had back in May. Going there, you got to go to Auburn. It's good. You got Miami in the non-conference. It's a tough schedule. It's not an easy schedule, and this is a program that is, last year they struggled. They lost to Arkansas. They lost to Mississippi State. They lost to Ole Miss. None of those are easy games per se. So
Yeah.
that's part of the deal with the SEC. So again, I think if you told A&M fans, hey, they go 10-2 this year, I think a lot of them would take that. I'd say, hey, 10-2, good solid season. You built off, you improved off last year, and now let's go make the run in 23. So I say that all to say that I don't think Jimbo's under a ton of pressure this year. I think it's more next year is kind of more the year. Just show some improvement. Now, if you are 8-4 again this year, yeah, you're going to have a lot of people looking around. But all that said, he's got a guaranteed contract for the next 10 years, so it's not like they can do anything. You know what I mean?
Just like Mario. Yeah.
I know it's not you're going to run him off, because
Right.
I mean they owe him $95 million. So that is the nature of this thing. So they're Jimbo and Texas A&M are going to be together for a while. And once he bypassed the chance to go to LSU last year, that pretty much told me that he's content, because if there was a job that I thought he would have considered, it would have been that one. But I think he's probably going to be pretty content for a while. So they just got to keep recruiting at a high level, and they've got to start making more serious runs like they did in 2020 when they went 9-1, and they were in the cusp and right on the outside of the college football playoff. They got to get back to that pretty soon, within the next year or two.
Can't let you get out of here without talking a little bit about Texas, just because of what they've been doing on the trail and the excitement level around that program. Fourth most talented team, I think, in the country when it comes to blue chip ratio, right in front of A&M, and obviously Quinn Ewers, quarterback. How's that team going to shape up this year? What's your expectation for them?
I think the thing for them is just get on the right side of 500. Just show some improvement. That's it. Because last year was such a disaster. The 6-game losing streak, going 5-7, losing to Kansas. Texas has just got to get back to not being a punchline. That's really, I think, the baseline for them. Overall, this is not a perfect team. I think Quinn is super talented. You watch him throw the ball, you understand why he was ranked as the number 1 recruit in the country, the number 1 quarterback in the country. But he hasn't thrown a live pass at a game since 2020, because he reclassified. He went and rolled Ohio State last year. He handed off the ball twice. That was the extent of his live game action last year. So I think there's going to be some growing pains there, but you've got Bijan Robinson in the backfield. You got Xavier Worthy at receiver. The growing pains are going to be up front. The offensive line, you're probably going to start a couple freshmen, true freshmen. That's as we were just talking about with A&M, that's a sticky proposition. It's gonna be tough a little bit. That Alabama game is gonna be a real eye opener in week 2, and I think we're gonna learn a lot about that team. Defensively, they've got to get better in terms of stopping the run. They've got to get better as a pass rushing unit. They were not. Defensive coordinator Pete Kwiatkowski said it when he was asked about the pass rush. He's like, "What pass rush? It was non-existent last year." So they've got to get better at that. Now, to Sark's credit, they have recruited really heavily on the line of scrimmage. They brought in 7 offensive linemen and 8 defensive linemen in this last class. He knows what they're going to have to look like when they get to the SEC because he's been there. But it's going to take time. I wouldn't expect this team to be a Big 12 title contender this year. If they are, that's a huge surprise, and I think that'd be a great step for Texas. But I think even if you get back to 8-4, that would be a huge next step for them, and then get you set up for, okay, maybe in 23 you can start getting closer to being back a Big 12 title contender and start getting this roster ready for whenever it is you go to the SEC, whether it's 24, whether it's 25, whenever that may be. They've got to get this roster right. But overall, I think it's a lot of talent. They have brought in a lot of talent, but it's a really young team. And like I said, I think there's going to be some growing pains here and there. So overall, I think they're not in the top 25 in the AP poll, and I don't think they should be. They'll need to earn their way there. But I think this is a team that has a good mix of young talent in it and has some potential down the road if they're able to keep some stability in the coaching staff and be able to keep some stability on the roster.
All right. Miami has tried recruiting the state of Texas. They've had some of their elite kids here, obviously playing well against Texas A&M. I think could probably go a long way in helping them with some inroads. Have you heard any Miami chatter from any of the kids out there? Do you think they got a chance to get any of these kids?
I mean, not as much, because I think so much of this state has become an SEC state, especially now that Texas and Oklahoma are going to go there. And that's going to be the fascinating dynamic to me is A&M moving to the SEC 10 years ago changed the landscape because this was mostly a Big 12 state. And then it became more of an SEC state when A&M got there because it opened the door. I mean, Alabama had come in anyway, but it opened the door for the Ole Misses and the Mississippi States of the world. Now with Texas and Oklahoma going, I think it's going to be heavily an SEC state, at least for the elite kids. And then the Big 12, we'll see how that goes. But I think Miami is one of those programs that, because of its reputation, because of its history, and some of the buzz that we've talked about with Mario, I think they're always going to be somebody that's in the mix, and that's someone that kids are going to know because kids know about the U, they know about the history, and it's got a certain cool factor to it, and so I think that's something that they can certainly leverage at Miami, and I think in Texas, yeah, I don't think you're ever going to rule that out. And recruiting is so national now that you can. It seems like because of how much we've closed the communication gap, that sometimes it's easier for some of these Texas kids to go out of state, and for any kid anywhere to go out of state, because it doesn't seem as far when they're in your phone all the time, when they're DMing you all these graphics, when you're seeing all the videos and all that stuff. It does. I guess the distance doesn't feel real until you actually get on the plane. But
Right.
but I think I don't think Miami will have a problem recruiting Texas. It's just it is difficult to get in here right now, just because, like I said, the A&M's doing a really bang up job. Texas obviously has raised its level, and the SEC is in here a lot. Ohio State comes in here a lot. So it is very saturated in this state. I mean, we've got 12 FBS programs. We're about to have a 6th Power 5 program when Houston moves to the Big 12 next year. There's a lot of schools in here and a lot of schools recruiting here. LSU obviously is right next door. They come in here a lot. So it is a challenge to do it. And you have to have, I think, a concerted effort to do it. You have to have a staff that's willing to play ball with the Texas high school coaches and build those strong relationships with those guys, because they matter a whole lot in the ecosystem, the recruiting ecosystem here. So it just takes a certain effort. You can spot recruit, and there's always going to be schools that do it, and that's possible. But I think if you really want to get some guys out of here, you got to definitely invest some time and energy into it.
All right. Last one, we're out of here. I'm going to give you $100. I'm going to put you on the spot. You got to put $100 on Texas A&M, or one of these other schools in Texas. Who's winning the national championship first?
A&M, just the talent. It's the talent level right now. And the thing is the road is harder for A&M because they're in the SEC West. But when I look at the talent and I go watch A&M on the field, they're starting to look like what Alabama looks like, or LSU or Georgia from a roster standpoint. When you see the linemen and you see just the body types. And to me, at some point, if you continue to recruit at that level, at some point it's going to pay off. So they're, to me, they're the closest of the group. I wouldn't rule out Baylor, although some of that plays into what does the playoff structure look like,
Yeah.
and what is the future of the Big 12, and what does that schedule strength mean. But you saw what Baylor did last year with Dave Aranda, and I think they're doing a really, really good job of they've become a consistent program. We don't talk about Baylor a lot nationally,
Yeah.
but they've won the Big 12 3 times in the last 10 years. They've had 5 or 6 double-digit win seasons 2011. They've been way more consistent than Texas or Texas A&M in that span. So they're a team that I wouldn't rule out, but they're in an interesting spot because they're in upper part of the Big 12, but what is the Big 12 going to mean in a few years when it comes to the playoff? Who knows? And then Texas is going to be able to recruit the talent, but they always have been able to recruit the talent. That's the big question. When is it going to translate, and when are they going to get it all together? But of all those 3 teams, yeah, I right now I'd pick Texas A&M just on the way they're recruiting.
All right, Sam. Listen, I appreciate it, man. I know you're a busy guy, so gave us more than half an hour here to talk about Miami A&M. Maybe we check back in with you the game, the week of the game, to see how things kind of go after the first 2 weeks. But I wanted our listeners, our Miami fans, to get a better idea about this A&M team that they're all looking forward to watching take on the Hurricanes.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me, and we're looking forward to seeing you.
All right, man. Thanks.